whatever that is that lights a child up, make sure you support it, because that will take them really far in life. That shallow obsession with sneakers as a kid, that's something that just a kid sees and wants, but it can actually teach them the value of hard work in the long run if you formulate the solution correctly.
Welcome to the Honor It podcast. I'm Honor Garrett, your host, and we're here to honor all that is good in the world. We delve into inspiring stories that matter to you with top experts, entrepreneurs, creators, innovators, and pro athletes who are making a difference, impacting lives, and creating positive change. My mission is to inspire women to thrive and build a life and legacy they love, no matter what their age. We live life in the game, not on the sidelines. Today, I have the privilege of talking with Brian Hess, a remarkable entrepreneur and leader who has not only built a seven-figure company, but has also left an indelible mark on his industry through commitment, integrity, and unwavering dedication. As the CEO and president of the Pavement Group, top contractor school, and the host of the Brian Hess Show, Brian is truly an industry icon who sets the example for excellence in every aspect of life. His journey is not just about business success, it's about making a difference and leaving a legacy that spans generations. Brian's unique approach to client services is nothing short of revolutionary, where personal attention, customized technology, education, and mentorship play a pivotal role in achieving the highest level of success. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Brian cherishes his role as a son, husband, and father, finding immense fulfillment in building a beautiful life with his wife, Lori, and their 4 children. Join us as we delve into Brian's incredible history, his commitment to doing the right things, the power of knowledge, and the importance of never giving up. This episode promises to be a masterclass in leadership, entrepreneurship, and making a lasting impact on those around you. Welcome, Brian. How are you?
Man, I need you to copy and paste that for me so I can show that to my kids and wife. And that was impressive. Thank you so much. Humbling. Thank you. And it's great to be here with you.
Well, I really appreciate it. I remember meeting you a few years ago at the Grow for God conference with Tamara Andrus, and they introduced me to you and Michael Huey, and they were such big fans of yours. So I was excited to meet you, and you spoke and had a great message. So I want to ask you, I believe you're from Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a Pittsburgh guy. You want me to pull down the Steeler helmets over here so I can show you?
I know. I saw. My husband actually worked for Dick LeBeau, but that was when he's
a legend. Love that guy.
Yes, he is. When he was with the Cincinnati Bengals, though, not after his Steelers days. But I wanted to ask you, could you share some memorable experiences or influences from your upbringing in Pennsylvania that have shaped your values and your work ethic?
Yeah, I'm the son of a steel worker, and my mom stayed at home and raised my brother and I. And so, from a very small town in Western PA called Uniontown, Pennsylvania, very close to the West Virginia border. So really blue collar roots through and through. And I was privileged to never have to look very far for where I would find work ethic. My dad, extremely hard worker, and my mom constantly taking care of us. So 2 just great examples of what hard work and dedication to family looks like. And my grandparents, same thing. My grandfather on my dad's side was a coal miner. My grandfather on my mom's side was a Greyhound bus driver. So always just putting in the work. And when you see that at a young age, you don't know anything other than that, right? Like you just see hard work everywhere. And so that's kind of what you duplicate. And so for me, growing up, playing sports, working, I had a newspaper route at 11 years old. And I think about that now. My father was taking me to deliver newspapers at 4:00 in the morning before he went to the steel mill every day so that I could learn the value of hard work. And I wanted sneakers when I was a kid. That was my obsession. And my dad was like, I'm not going to buy them for you. And my older brother had a paper route, and he was 5 years older than me. And I said, well, if he can have one, why can't I have one? And So, now I know what a sacrifice that was for my dad to wake up that early to take me in the snow, in the rain, when I was 11 years old to, to even be able to get to the neighborhoods that I delivered the newspapers in. And did that my whole high school career, from middle school up into high school. My daughter's 11 now. And so I think,
Wow.
man, what a sacrifice my parents made to be able to teach me those lessons of hard work. And learning that so young, again, I just never knew anything else. And so for me, ringing that bell of being a good example of what hard work looks like was natural. I had the best example ever in my mom and dad, and everybody in my family for that matter. It was just, that's kind of the identity of what I believed our last name meant. It was like, you show up and you do the work and you work really hard. And if you work really hard, you're probably going to leave your kids a little bit better than what you had it. And that's what happened from my grandfather to my dad, and from my dad to us, and then from me to our kids. That's kind of the goal, right? Is to just leave them a little bit better than what you had it. And if you do that, you've probably lived a pretty successful life. And so that's what I remember, is always being surrounded by it. And so for me, as I grew up and got into business as an adult, it was just what I thought was normal. There was nothing other than that I ever thought of, was giving 110% in everything that you do.
And one thing that's really great is that having parents say no, and you having the fortitude to have the resourcefulness to go, well, then how can I get it? Instead of just saying, okay, I can't have it, that you were going to figure out a way, right?
Yeah, I was pretty committed to making sure that I had the best sneakers. But it's interesting. That's an analogy for plenty of other things that people want in life. Some people love cars. Some people love shoes. Some people love giving back. Some people love all of the above, right? And so whatever it is, it's a lesson for those listening and watching. Like, whatever that is that lights a child up, make sure you support it, because that will take them really far in life. That shallow obsession with sneakers as a kid, that's something that just a kid sees and wants, but it can actually teach them the value of hard work in the long run if you formulate the solution correctly.
Exactly. Well, your entrepreneurship started as a paper boy, and then now you have this huge company. What was that journey? Were there other things that you did? Why the Pavement business?
Yeah. So interesting enough, I started as a paper carrier, always had that entrepreneurial spirit. If you ask my parents, they would tell you stories of me, creating businesses in my head and in the back of the car when I was 5 or 6 years old. But when I got into being an adult, I took the traditional path of getting a job and working for corporations and things like that, always having like little entrepreneurial projects on the side. And so as I got older and I'd moved up the corporate ladder quite a bit, and I relocated from Pittsburgh down to South Florida with the corporate company that I was working for. And I walked into my first meeting in South Florida with a construction company that the guy was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so we made that connection. So that's how I ended up in construction. And I was 38 years old before I ended up taking the full leap in entrepreneurship. So I ended up working for that guy's company. He hired me away from my really successful corporate job that I thought, like, where I came from, that was the best I knew of anybody that I knew from a financial standpoint, and just the profile of that job. I got to go to all the professional sports events and host customers and do all kinds of cool stuff, running sales teams in a corporation like that. And so by the time I was 38, I had 3 kids and my wife stayed at home and still does. And I thought the company that I was working for was being purchased. And I thought to myself, it's now or never, right? The old Steve Harvey video where Steve says, like, at some point in life, you have to jump. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that's what it looked like. It was like, I'm either going to jump and I'm going to take this chance, or I'm going to think for the rest of my life about those dreams I had as a little boy of being an entrepreneur and a business owner and creating a culture and a company that's one that people can't wait to come to work at every day. So it was either jump or stay on the path and potentially look back way later on in life and think like, man, I really wish I would have done that. And, had the conversation with my wife, and I said, this is a huge risk for our family, right? But I really believe I can do it. I believe that we can create something that people love to come to. I know that we can solve problems for clients in a different way. I've always been a technology person, and that was really missing in our industry. And my wife gets all the credit. She said, I don't care if I live under a bridge with you, as long as we have our babies and we have each other, go do it. And I believe in you, and I'll be here every step of the way. And so, why Pavement? I'll answer it this way. I came into this industry knowing nothing about it. Like, I couldn't have told you the difference between asphalt and concrete, right? I knew there was a difference, but I couldn't have explained to you technically what it was. But I grew up around construction. That was who I knew, and what I knew was like that blue collar, hardworking people that were always around my family. My uncle owned a construction business, so I was familiar with it from that standpoint. But when I got into the industry, these were my people. Like, I felt at home here. And I also saw such an opportunity in being able to help clients in a different way, because the construction industry isn't a very innovative place. And so I thought, man, this is such an opportunity to be able to go innovate an industry that needs it so bad. And I became addicted to that, addicted to finding different ways to ultimately get our clients. We manage parking lot portfolios for some of the largest brands in the country. And so our job is to get facilities or property manager home to their family and their dinner table with less concerns because of our solutions than they would working with any other contractor. And so that became fulfilling for me. And those relationships that now our team manages, and I get to hear those success stories, and delivering a level of hospitality and construction, which is really rare. It's not something that's normal. It's super cool. I say this often, but like, there's a lot of days I walk in here and I can't believe I get paid to do what I do. It's so enjoyable to me, and the people that I get to do it with. My kids come in and out of here all the time, like on their way to or from school. My wife will stop, then they come in and they know everybody and they love it. They sit on the couch and look at financial statements with me. It's like, for everybody watching or listening, like, there was a point in my life where what I get to do every day was literally a thought in my mind that, like, I was like, man, I think that's possible. Like, I think that I could go and do this, or I think that company exists out there, but I just couldn't find it. And so when I couldn't find it for long enough, I just said, well, to hell with this. I'm going to create it, right? Like, I'm going to just go in a direction and put it all on the line. And if I don't win, then I can go back and get another corporate job, right? And but actually, the conference that I met you at, I remember having this long, really well thought out speech in, kind of in my mind. And I threw it all out the window because the people in the room just kept asking me, like, how do you do this? Like, how did you leave your job with your health insurance and your 401k? And I said to them, and I'll say it again here, if your dream isn't bigger than health insurance or a 401k, man, then you better reevaluate what you're dreaming. Because to me, I wasn't going to let a 401k or figuring out a way to get health insurance stop me from doing what it was that I wanted to do. And so I would challenge people to ask themselves, if that's the case, are your dreams really your dreams? Because if your actions don't line up with, if you're not willing to take the risk for it, then maybe it's not meant for you, right? And so stop torturing yourself with something that may not be what you think it is. It's, more of a wish or more of a hope than it is a dream, because a dream is something that you're willing to sacrifice anything to go and chase.
Well, I think it's so easy for people to say they want this or that, but to make something materialize, you have to put thought and focus and attention and intention into it. And it looks like for you, you're so blessed that you had parents that really taught you along the way the work ethic, allowed you to dream, And that entrepreneurial spirit is, I mean, that's unique because that's like you said, like burn the boats, and there's no looking back because you're choosing to do this. And I see in your success, that was a huge part of your success. But I also think relationships are key to you because I've never seen anyone just know so many people. Everyone has such great things to say about you because you actually build into people. And that's a whole nother side now that you have a show and you show up every morning, like every day. Like that is huge. How did you wrap your brain around that? Because were there days where you were like, can I really show up every day?
Oh, like this morning, I did not feel like doing the show when I woke up. We actually talked about it on the show. Like, not every day before you do it do you feel like doing it. But what that show has done for me is it's created a level of consistency and discipline in my life where, I'm sitting right here at 8 a.m. Eastern every single day, and I have different people in here with me. But it's also teaching my team how to show up because those guys and girls are co-hosting the show with me, and that cascades discipline and consistency throughout our organization. But from a relationship standpoint, I'll just say this. If I were to start over, if tomorrow this business was gone and I had to start over, I would choose relationship capital over real capital any day of the week. Meaning, like, if I had to start broke with relationships, or I had to start with money and no relationships, I would start with the relationships and no money, because people are everything. Without people, how are you going to make it anywhere? And the old African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Mm-hmm. And I live by that. I also live by the old Zig Ziglar quote, like, if you can help enough people get what they want, you never have to worry about getting what you want. And for me, there's so much value in what you can do for others, how you can impact others, how you can share what you've learned. And relationships will take you everywhere you want to go in life. And I'm a big John Maxwell fan. And so for me, it's the law of the picture, right? Like, people do what people see. And if we are a good example to others, then others live up to that example. And for me, the most, important example I can be is first and foremost to be the best that I can be with the gifts that God gave me. And then to be a great example of what consistency and hard work and all those things look like for our kids, and being a great husband to my wife. And those are all, by the way, relationships.
Right.
Like, you got a relationship with your kids, you've got a relationship with your wife, you've got a relationship with God. And if you don't value those relationships and you don't nurture those relationships, they won't be very healthy. And so to me, it's people, God first, family second. People are everything, right? It's, so for me, when I walk here every day, it's overwhelming sometimes to think of how many people show up every day to work for our company, ultimately to just go chase the dream that I had in my mind one day. And it's overwhelming to think that every day somebody gets up, lots of people, and they come to a place to work that they love, but they're chasing a dream that they're chasing their own dream within this bigger dream that we have. And I never take that for granted. I'm grateful every day for these people that show up here, that they maintain the values and the principles that we stand for as a company, that are the reason that we hired them in the first place. Like, not many people in our company have experience in construction or in asphalt, paving, and concrete before we hire them. We hire them because they're great people with good values and have big dreams. And we believe that we can make their dreams happen faster by being here than they would on their own. Or I would tell them to go chase it on their own. Right. And so it's an interesting journey when it comes to the one-to-many relationships that you have to manage. But what I've learned is you can't do the same forever, right? Like, you get a lot of relationships, and, I've gotten to a point in my life, I can't respond quickly to every text message that comes in because there's too many, right? There's too many people. But I've also learned that you don't have to, those people that Maybe they have to wait a day. I mean, I've come across texts that are 5 days old that they just made it to the bottom of my text list, but those people understand. And if they don't, then, I'm happy to explain that to them. It's not anything personal. It's not that I'm not thinking about all of those relationships and how much I love those people or value those people. It's just how life kind of works.
Yeah.
But I think anybody that is around me every day would tell you that relationships are the number one priority when it comes to my life. And that means people are the number one priority in my life. And so I think when our intentions are clear in how we show up, there's a lot of grace given from the other side. It's not 100% of the time. I've had a few friends that say, hey, you didn't get back to me fast enough. And, that's okay. It happens.
I really try to never be offended in life. That's my goal, is to never be offended, because I know everybody's in their own story. They've got their own journey, and it's not that they're not being gracious to me. It's that they've got other stuff to do. So
I have a good friend that says, this is a good quote for you. He says, busy people understand busy people.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And he's a pretty busy guy, because, that happens too. Like, you're trying to get back to each other and you can't. In fact, he just texted me this morning, and I remembered that like a day ago or 2 days ago, he had texted me. But the answer is, it's simple. And so I either have to call him or text him. And sometimes, crazy enough, like, my schedule is not conducive to always responding. And then, when I get home, I want to be with my kids and I want to be with my wife. And so I'm not going to, sit on the couch and return every text message to, not that it's not important, but it's not urgent matter of something that came through. Like I've had to learn that selfishness is actually can serve you really well at times, because you have to build boundaries around your busy life, or else you lose so much of the value in every relationship that you have, both friendships and with your family, with yourself. In fact, like, you can lose so much of yourself in trying to serve others. And for those of us who love and enjoy serving other people, if you don't have standards and boundaries to that, you can really lose yourself. And you see a lot of people do that, right? They end up becoming a little negative in the fact of serving others. And I never want to be that. I want to try to be able to build this to a point where, number one, I can be a good example to other people and hopefully in some way duplicate that. John Maxwell is a big inspiration to me. And certainly I try to show up in a similar way as John. Ed Milet is another, inspiration to me. And both of those guys I've been blessed enough to get to know. And so for me, I'm hoping that someday I can be in that same capacity to other people, where they say, like, I want to go and help people and serve people. And if we do that, I believe firmly that we can make the world a much better place. Just one relationship, one conversation, one person at a time.
Well, absolutely. I love John Maxwell. And the first book I read of his, I still remember the story of how someone was really building into another person, and they never felt like that other person heard them. And then years later, he came back and told him how he saved his life, and that you really don't know the impact you're actually having on someone. And then Ed Milet just read his book, The Power of One More. And I love the conversation that you guys had just about faith and energy and showing up, and how you show up is how you attract other people to you. One of my favorite quotes, be the change you wish to see in the world, right? So be that. And it's really important to have those role models, mentors in your life. And I respect my husband very much, like you, that he always said, I'll never spend 1 minute at work longer than I need to. I'm going to stay until I complete everything I need to do, but I will never not get home as quickly as I can to be with the family. And he never even took up golf, because in football, if he played golf and football, we definitely would never see him. So I know that faith is really important to me, and I believe it's important to you too. Has that been throughout your entire life from when you were a kid, or was your faith something you found later in life?
So faith was always around my life when I was a kid. I wasn't raised in a family that went to church all the time. I was baptized as a child, all the, checking the boxes type stuff.
Yeah.
But I really found my faith in my 30s. I remember talking to a lot of people who were mentors along the way and them kind of telling me, like, if you want to do these things in your life that you are talking about doing, that should be a real focus in your life. Like, you should put a real focus on figuring out your faith. And I remember one day looking up in my life and looking around, and all these strong Christian men were surrounding me, like, that went to church and were a great example of how they dealt with problems in business. And they didn't have the same leadership style that I was used to working for over my corporate career. And so that was interesting to me. And then when we moved back, so my Lori and I moved back with our kids from Florida back here home to Pittsburgh. And so we lived in a home that I literally had to drive past the church every day. Like every day that I was leaving my house, there was this big church up on the hill. And I always thought to myself, like, I wonder what Victory Family Church is. What is it like in there? And there was one Sunday morning where God just said to me, like, you should go to that place today. And so I said to Lori, okay, I'm going to go over to Victory Church and I'm going to check it out. And I've been there every day ever since. I walked in and sat down in the seat, and Pastor John was talking about something. And I remember thinking, like, how does this guy know exactly what I'm going through right now? Like, it was like this service was like pointed directly at me. And so over the years, like, I have lunch with Pastor John once a month now. And I walked up to him after that service, interesting story. And I said, we're gonna do big things together someday. And I don't know what that's gonna be, but I just have this feeling that, like, you and I are gonna get along really well and we're gonna do big things. And so last year, Pastor John invited us to his small group, and now I have lunch with him, and he's introduced me to other people that are in the same similar scenario from a business standpoint that Lori and I are in. And so we have a small group together with a lot of those people. And so faith, I would say, in the last decade, faith has transformed my life in almost an unrecognizable fashion. Like, they say born again, and not to say that I was, lost before, but it certainly feels that way compared to where I am now. Right. And so there's a purpose and a clarity to my life that, prior to having that closeness with God, I didn't feel. And so now people ask me often, how do you stay so calm with all the things that you got going on and the crazy schedule? And I always just say, I'm glad that you asked. And let me tell you, like, how that works in my life. And I was just talking to somebody this morning about, like, reading scripture, and the need for scripture is like the medication in my life. I don't need any medication like the doctor prescribed stuff. I just need the scripture that will heal every situation that I find myself in. And, wisdom, I just said this to the person I was having that conversation with today. Wisdom isn't acquired by accident. It's an intentional pursuit of either lessons. Sometimes we acquire wisdom from accidents, meaning like something happens,
Right,
and we learn from that. But even that is a choice to see the gift and see the learning lesson in those scenarios. And so for me, just like anybody else that's on a walk of faith, you feel close to God some days, and some days, you feel yourself drifting away. But the power of faith is recognizing that and getting yourself back to where you need to be, like finding that center again. And as I've gotten older, maybe this is the wisdom of age coming through, but as I've gotten older, I've found that easier to catch myself and not let the other powers take over and manipulate my path, but rather just to walk with God and find those scriptures that bring peace to my life, to my heart, to the people around me. And so, yeah, I would say faith was always part of my journey. But without a doubt, in the last decade, my life is unrecognizable because I found Jesus, and I found a path that is just where I feel like I should have always been.
Yeah, I don't know how people do it without faith. I mean,
Likewise.
Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, that is one of my favorite, because so often people are in this victim mode of everything's happening to them and I want to say, no, it's all happening for you. Like you said, if you are wise enough to see the lesson in something, even though it might not be exactly what you're wanting to experience. So that's great. And I want to be respectful of your time, but
We're good. You don't have to rush. We can
okay, so
keep
many
going.
people find love in unexpected places. I was actually a sports reporter and I interviewed my husband. But so how did you and your wife, Lori, meet?
Oh, this is a crazy story. You're going to love this one. So one of my closest friends owned a bar and restaurant. And so I can't remember. I think I was 29 years old, I think. Let me think about it. Yeah, I think I was 29 or 30 years old. And he asked me, hey, I want to finish the second floor of this restaurant and bar. And I'd love for you to, invest in the bar. And I was like, man, I don't know anything about the restaurant business. And, first of all, I don't want to invest money into something I don't know about. And second of all, I don't want to lose a friend in the process. Right. And so I don't think I want to do that. And he said, well, why don't you come and, just hang out Friday nights and like see what it's like. And maybe you can grasp some knowledge of that in the process. And I was like, I kind of always wanted to be a bartender. Now I had a corporate job at this time, like, doing very well, but I'm like, I've always kind of thought it would be cool to be a bartender. Now you can see why like finding God was a good thing in my life, right? Like, I'm like, this just sounds like such a great idea. Right. And so I said to him, like, how about if I bartend on Friday nights? Like that would be fun. I know a lot of people. The place will be busy, like I'll bring a lot of people there. And so I get there on the very first day that I was working, and Lori was working there during the day. Mm. And so I walked in and I introduced myself to her, and she was not very kind to me at all, because it turns out that the people that worked there that really needed to earn a living there, I was taking their shift. I didn't know, right? I didn't know that. But they're like, who's this Hess guy on the schedule, right? And so she was not very nice to me. And then thankfully we were at a barbecue like a month later, maybe a month and a half later, and she wasn't working there anymore. And so, I had the courage to say, why are you so mean to me? Right. Yeah. And she said, I wasn't trying to be mean to you.
You took my tips.
And I said, well, great. That must mean that we can go on a date then. Right. And so, so we went on our first date in July of 2010, and we've been together ever since. And so 4 going on 5 kids later, all started in my buddy's restaurant and bar with me trying to pretend that I was Tom Cruise in Cocktail or something like that.
Did you ever invest?
No, I never did. No, never owned a restaurant bar, but I did have a lot of fun bartending. I must say that. I'm a people person. And so talking to people, I don't think I was a very good bartender, but I did have a lot of fun doing it.
That's great. That's great. Well, maybe that's where you learn to lend an ear. Yeah, well, I don't know.
Definitely hear a lot of stories from the people on the other side, and most of them are not positive stories.
Well, I talk about legacy a lot, and that's what I try to help women do, because I think sometimes when you stay home with your kids, I would never change that for a million years. Loved raising my children. But then they all go away and they're all on their own, and you're wondering what's next. And so many people think there's nothing left. And I think it's just the beginning of something brand new. So as far as legacy, because I think it's something that really resonates with successful individuals, how important is it for you to leave a lasting legacy for the people you know, your family? What will that look like?
Yeah, I think it's everything. I think if you're not clear on legacy, like, I'm not sure that you could ever reach your potential, because when you really think about it, and for me, the last 5.5 years of owning and growing this company, that view of maybe what is possible for a legacy has changed and evolved. But I think if we don't start with the end in mind, if we don't start, frankly, I probably wouldn't have started this business if I didn't think about my legacy. Because I thought like, and not that there's anything wrong with working for other people. I just didn't feel like that was my path. When people look back at my life, like that's not what I wanted my children to see. I wanted to do something that was more in line with what I had inside of me, the spirit of who I believed I was. And so I think it's everything. And I think when you keep legacy in the forefront of your mind of like, what am I actually trying to do? And so one of the things that I always say is I want to be known as the person that's the steady hand for other people in a storm. And I want to be a person that's known for valuing people and helping people and being a mentor and helping so many people in the construction industry be able to scale their businesses and learn the things that maybe they didn't have access to before. And if we could be that conduit to provide that information for them, man, what a gift that is. And at the end of our life, like when we look back, they always say you don't ever see a Brinks truck following a hearse, right? Nobody's going to care how many digits you have in your bank account. It'll be nice to leave your family something. But at the end of the day, the only thing that we have is what we instill in other people. And I think of my grandmother, who was my biggest fan. She believed in me when it didn't make any sense to do that. And she'd say like, I believe in you, honey. I think you can do everything that you talk about. And so for me, like I get chills just saying that because I know there's such a huge piece of her that walks around with me every day. And so I think to myself, when my great grandchildren think about me or they say my name, like, what are they going to know? Are they going to know that I made a difference? Are they going to know, and I drive around Pittsburgh here and I see Carnegie and Frick and Mellon and all the names that people would know anywhere in the country, even though they're here in Pittsburgh. And I've gotten to a point in my life where I know, like, I've interacted with enough people that are in those positions. Mm-hmm. And I say, and this is for everybody listening, like, why not you? Why not me? Why not? I know that if God blesses me with the level of things that those gentlemen were fortunate enough to have, I know that I will have the wisdom to steward it well. And so I say to myself, like, why not me? Instead of somebody else, why not me? I also believe, I've said this to my pastor a bunch, like that I know of. I don't know of any billionaires that speak of Jesus. I don't know of any, not off the top of my head. I can't think of any. And so I always say that's one of my goals. If I can make it that far and I can help people find what I found, and maybe I can do that for them earlier in life or whenever that is, wherever God leads me to be able to do that. I just think that's really important. And I've said to my wife before, if tomorrow was it for me, like, I know I know you'll miss me and I know you'll cry, but understand you don't have to cry for me. Like I have lived a dream, like a real dream come true in my life. And I feel like I have a lot, way more work to do, but I also have an incredible amount of fulfillment for where I am and what I get to do every day and who I get to do it with and who I get to impact. And I'm really grateful. And this is something for you when you think about what's life like after the kids. Like, I think it's really cool that you're doing this and that someday when none of us are here, but your great grandchildren are going to get to watch this episode. And that's part of your legacy, is that you found a way to give back to people and you found a way to, in some small way, like reinvent yourself and do something different. This isn't sportscasting, right? This isn't doing sports interviews. This is a lot different. And so I think that's what's important. And it's part of the reason why I document so much of my journey is I think that's really cool to be able to hand your children memories and a legacy of who their dad was or who their grandfather was or who their great grandfather was. And for me, I'm chasing that every day, trying to figure out how I can make a bigger difference, help more people, and leave a legacy that inspires my kids and far beyond that.
Yeah. If I could help people understand that your legacy really is your gift to the world and to the people that you love to carry on for hopefully infinity to other generations. And speaking of children, because you have 4, and the 5th one on the way, do you see any of the qualities of you or your wife and your kids? Because all of my kids are completely different and they're amazing, but they're different. Is it fun seeing the different aspects of them as they're growing up?
Yeah, it's really cool. I think you always see some of those things. The two youngest boys have a lot of my qualities. I don't know why that is, but their personalities are more in alignment with mine.
Mhm.
But all of our kids have those things that you can pick out that they got from their mom or they got from their dad. And I love the uniqueness of all of their personalities. And then knowing that, I'll tell you this story. So, our 9-year-old now, he was always the shy one. He was the one that like just keeps to himself, and he's such a sweet, loving little boy. And but he was always like kind of shy, and and I can see the work that we've done as parents and the work that he's put in as a little boy, like him starting to come out of his shell. And I've told this story, I think one other time on a podcast, but every night when I go into his room to say goodnight, I always say to him, I'm so proud to be your daddy, buddy. I'm just so proud to be your dad. And I like to think that makes a difference, that when he hears that enough times, and it's not because he did anything great or because he scored a goal in hockey or because he did anything that day. It's just like, you're really great just for who you are. And I think as we do that, we realize as parents the difference we can make, not just what they catch that we do or what we teach them that we do, but the patterns of things that we do with them and for them. They actually change our kids, and they can change them for the better and they can change them for the worst. And so when I think about that as a parent, man, that's a lot to carry, right?
Huge
It's a lot of
responsibility.
responsibility. But the investment of that time every night to give that little boy a kiss on his head and tell him how proud I am to be his dad, when you see him start to stand up a little taller and start to be willing to shake somebody's hand in a conversation, and he's becoming a little man, right? And to know that you can make a difference like that in your own kids or other kids, right? Because it doesn't just stop there. I'm on the board of a youth program here in Pittsburgh, and I've learned that you can do that in other kids too. And sometimes those other kids really need it. They don't maybe get that all the time. And so for me, I think about that every day that I walk into my house. It's like a welcoming committee most days when I walk into my house.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think, man, what a blessing it is, for I didn't have our first child for me was born when I was 33 years old. And a handful of years there before I was 33 years old, I wasn't sure if I would have kids. Like I was at that point where I had been divorced and I didn't have a relationship. And I was like, man, I always wanted kids and I wasn't sure if that would happen. And so every day I walk in there and I think, thank you, God, for giving me these gifts in my life. And they are not always easy gifts, like anybody who's a parent will tell you that. But man, is it rewarding. And I could tell you story after story of all the unique and cool qualities about them. But yeah, they all have different unique things about them. Like my daughter will sell you anything. And she is like a serial entrepreneur
Oh,
at
that's
11 years old. She's always looking for a way to make money and always looking for a way to be in business. And she asks me literally every week when she can come to the office again and hang out with the people here. And I think it's just great how we live wears off on them. And
absolutely 100%. Because my daughter is majoring in entrepreneurship. And she said, I have to interview a bunch of entrepreneurs for my class in college. Do you know anybody? And do you know what? I realized that I didn't know a lot. I mean, I do now because I'm in that arena, but I didn't grow up with any entrepreneurs, none, zero. And I realized that's why it took me till I was 50 years old, right? To get the bug or to really figure out what I wanted to do, because it was never an example for me in my life. I never saw anyone that did something like this. And that's why it's so scary. So what a blessing that is for your kids, that they're seeing dad do the cool things that he wants to do and go after that. And, yes, children are a responsibility, but what a privilege that you're getting. But they're going to actually do more of what you're doing than what you're saying, for sure.
Oh, I believe it. Trust me. I see it. And it's really cool. If there's anything that I think, doing this at 38 years old and being where we are in such a short period of time, like, it's interesting because the younger two really don't know anything but this. Mm-hmm. But the older two watch daddy go to work every day for somebody else. And so they see the difference, right? And you could tell the difference. Like, there's a difference in the way that they see the world is a little bit different, the younger two than the older two. Like, the younger two just think like anything's possible, like my 6-year-old, he's a firecracker, right? So he says to me, we're sitting in the airport one day and he knows that daddy's been on private jets and things like that. And we were flying to Florida and our flight was delayed. And he just looks at me and he says, Daddy, how long are we going to have to come to this airport? And I said, what do you mean, buddy? And he goes, well, how long before we can just walk and get on the plane like you do sometimes? Like, he thinks we should just be flying on a private jet everywhere. And then, this happened just a couple of days ago. So we have the Pavement group has partnerships with the Steelers and Penguins. So we go to a lot of sporting events. And so he's the biggest sports fan in the family, the 6-year-old. And so I said, Quincy, do you want to go to the Steelers game with Daddy on Sunday? And he says, where are we sitting, Daddy? And at first I was like,
like, how old is he?
He's 6. Yeah. I said, you little shit. Right. And then I thought to myself, that's all he knows.
Yeah.
For me, I could say like, man, he's not grateful to be able to go to a game, but like, it's an example of how kids view what's possible. And so absolutely. I view that as a gift. I explained to him that, hey man, you should really be grateful that you get to go to games. But I also think, how cool is it that he thinks anything is possible, that he can do whatever he wants in life, that he should fly on a private jet, which he has no concept of what it takes to do that. But if that's what he decides to do, that's what he's going to do because, we've shown him in some ways that you can go after anything you want, right? Like, if you can work hard enough and you can pursue it, you're going to be doing a lot of cool things in your life.
And a lot of times people, especially people who are Christians, tend to feel like they need to have less so someone else can have more, which I don't agree with. I believe if you have the right heart and you have abundance, you're going to do the right thing with it. So I think it's so important to know that anything's possible. I want to thank you so much. You've been so awesome. And we could go and even get on a tangent in sports, but we're not going to do that right now because I'm going to be respectful.
That's for another episode. Yeah, we'll go into it.
Exactly. I'd love to end every episode with the same question. This is the Honor It podcast. So what or who are you choosing to honor today?
Definitely my wife. When I think about the journey to get here and what sacrifice it takes, there's nobody that has sacrificed more or been more open to sacrifice than she has. And she's the rock of our family. She raises our 4 kids with no help. We have sitters so we could go do date night, but we don't have anybody that comes to the house on a regular basis. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we've chosen not to do that. And so she drives them to school. If she's not driving them, I drive them to school, but she carries the load so much and does it with grace and so much patience, and for them and for me. Like, I need all the grace I can get. But yeah, without her, none of this is possible. And anybody here in the office would tell you that too. She just does it quietly, doesn't need a whole lot of gratitude or thanks. When we went on our first date, I asked her where she thought she would be in 5 years. And she said, I really just want to be a mom. Like, outside of that, everything else is a bonus. And so to be able to honor her by delivering on the promises that we made to each other and that we pursued when it comes to business and God and all the things that has become our life. That's the greatest joy of my life, is to be able to give back to her the life that she deserves and our kids deserve.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. What a perfect place and note to end this episode. Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And until next time, remember, we are not promised tomorrow. So be present today. It's a gift, and take time to honor it all.